Okay, so now some key ideas and hints on how to actually perform the talk. How do you talk, right? So perhaps in the earlier slides so far that we've seen is how to design the slides. So I also talked about how to talk, but now we will deliberately mention some key ideas on the presentation skills that you should hopefully have or acquire as you practice this process of giving talks to a public audience. By the way, I use public audience, and somebody asked me, some student asked me one of the years, well, what do you mean by public? Who's a public? Well, that's a good question. So it depends. In my view, you have an actual public audience as soon as we have 10 or more people. Right, that's kind of my definition, right? So if you have, I mean, sometimes you could also present to a group of people that are less than 10 people, and that's also a public discussion. You're still talking to different people. So I mean, we use the word public talks, but it could be a different type of talks. It could be a talks in a classroom. It is still public talk. You're talking in front of a crowd. And like I said, in my definition, as soon as you have more than 10 people, it seems like it's a reasonable number of people that you have. And then, like I said, you will probably end up talking to bigger rooms as well. Right? The more experience you get, and the more you get invited to different places, you'll talk to different groups. Right? So I'll talk about me personally. I've taught graduate classes, Ph.D. level classes, where it's only 9 students in the class. And I've taught classes where I had 100 students in class. And I've taught classes where I had 200 students in class. And I also but gave a lecture, and there were 250 people in the audience. So it really depends on what you have, the size of the audience. But in the end, it's all referred to as public talks. Okay, so present, don't read. This is a very important thing to remember, is that you want to present. You want to present, and as you present, you want to be in a discussion with the audience. You do not want to be at the front of the room with a bunch of slides, and then you're just there looking down. You're either looking at your phone because you wrote what you want to talk on your phone and you're reading it from your phone, or you're looking on a piece of paper, and then you're reading it from there, or you're reading it from your computer. You don't want to do that. It's not a good practice for giving a good presentation. I was once invited to an event. I gave a talk in Ottawa, at the University of Ottawa, and so I was invited there by the European Commission, so I went, and it was very interesting. We gave a talk, and others and my colleagues and so on, and then there was a professor there, I'm not going to say who it was, and she's a very distinguished, highly decorated professor from the US, and she came and she was presenting, but she had no slides, and her talk was entirely written on paper, and the entire 30 minutes was this very distinguished, high-profile professor standing at the front reading her paper. And as she was doing this, I was looking at the audience. I was just kind of looking at the audience, just curious if because I felt very sleepy when she was doing this. I felt like I needed 2 cups of coffees to keep me awake. And I was looking around, everybody was yawning or just closing their eyes. And it was literally after lunch, so nobody had the energy to listen. So this is very important, to not read, but rather talk. Rather talk to your audience. Right, and also you should not memorize. Right, you shouldn't memorize what you want to say. You should comprehend it and then say it in your own words. You just kind of go into a discussion with the audience, like I'm doing right now. Right. So with your presentation planned, you'll have more or less a speech written, right? So when you have your presentation, you've done your slides properly, you essentially have a story that you want to tell, right? It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. You have an introduction, you have a body, and you have a conclusion. Now, the trap that could happen is that people will end up reading it. So if you kind of turn these slides into a speech, or perhaps taking your report and you want to read it, you'll end up reading it, and you don't want to do that. You do not want to read. You want to actually discuss what you want to present. So reading creates a monotone delivery and it prevents eye contact. Monotone is like one tone, there is no emotions in it, very, very low volume. It's just uniform. There is no high peaks as you talk. And you know, that's a very boring talk. Like, you don't want to be in that room when this happens. You want to find the closest door available to escape from that room, because this is not a valuable presentation. You'll be wasting your time in that room, right? Perhaps it's a very smart presenter. Perhaps there's some valuable things to say, but the presentation will be a total, a total miss, right? So you don't want to do that. You want your presenter to give you eye contact. Right? As a presenter, when you present, you want to have some eye contact with your audience. Now, make sure that you don't just keep looking at one person. That's also kind of weird and unusual. You want to distribute your eye contact across the room. Make sure you go from one end to the other. Don't do it like a sprinkler that sprinkles water and then just look at one person. Just do it kind of naturally from left to right, and just look for a few seconds and then move on to the next person and so on. But don't do it deliberately, one person after another, row by row and so on. You don't want to do that. You want to make it natural, and you want to give eye contact to the audience. You don't want to read. Now, you want to make sure that you turn the presentation into a dynamic, interesting presentation into a crash and bore. You want to make sure that it doesn't become boring and it doesn't turn off the interest of the audience. Now, if you do need help for your own sake, right? When you create your slides, you want to add some comments for yourself. Not for anybody else, for your own self. You could create slide notes in PPT. PPT is PowerPoint, so Microsoft PowerPoint. You could create that and you could write these notes. So it's just right under the slides, you'll have a space where you could create notes. These notes are not shown to the audience. It will not be projected with a projector. They're there just for you. I don't suggest that you have them when you present. It will be there when you practice. It's not a bad idea to have it when you practice, so that you could make sure that you don't forget the topics that you want to discuss. When I prepare slides for classes that I teach or for when I give talks, I always write comments in this space in the notes of every slide on different things that I want to discuss beyond what's written. So I remember the topics that I want to discuss, and then I practice a couple of times before I come in and give the presentation, and I'll remember these things that I wanted to say, right? I'll remember it, right? So this is not a bad idea. Okay, so let's continue with other key things to remember when you present. Don't forget that you need to speak from memory and knowledge of the material. You don't want to appear fake in your presentation. Now, I've had students in the past, what they do is they know they have to present, and so what they do, and they know they're not allowed or they're not encouraged to have notes with them as they present. They literally memorize every single word that they want to say. And when people do that, you will notice it. It will appear very, very fake, right? It will appear fake. You don't want to do that. Again, like we said, and I keep repeating, it has to appear natural. Right? This is why sometimes I am turned off by TED Talks. They appear to be highly fake, right? They are very rehearsed, very people have probably memorized what they want to say, and it's kind of a turnoff. I don't necessarily enjoy it. I rather like to listen to talks that are very natural, direct. They just come in with whatever they have to discuss, and it appears that they know the topic more confidently. The other people that memorize, it doesn't give you confidence that they know the topic very well. It's their own topic that they're presenting, but it doesn't give you a lot of confidence in their knowledge skills. So don't memorize. Just say it the way you understand it. Now, if you memorize your speech or read it, it will sound awful. I'm telling you that. I've had students that have done this. I've seen academics that do this. I've seen TED Talks that are like this. It's just awful. It's really, really bad. So, and look, the audience are smart people. They will detect when you do that. So you don't want to do that. Use natural speech rhythm, right? So use your own kind of, like, how do you talk to your friends? Just talk the same way, right? Keep it professional. Keep it professional. You could keep it light as well. You know, like I said, we could put in a joke once in a while to keep the audience kind of interested and attentive with you. But at the same time, you can speak with your own typical speech rhythm that you talk regularly with your friends and with your colleagues. Always check out the presentation setup before you present to prevent problems and surprises. This is very important, right? So it just, and for some reason it always happens, right? You have a talk and you go into the podium. The organizers give you the wireless microphone, the mobile microphone that you put in your jacket, and you connect it, and then suddenly the microphone doesn't work, or the clicker doesn't work, or the slides is not projected on the projector. So you connect your computer, but nothing shows up on the projector. There's always something that goes wrong with presentations. So you want to avoid that. So if you know that you will talk at a certain time, you want to come in earlier, set it up, make sure everything works, discuss things with the presenter, with the organizers, and then so that hopefully by the time your turn comes in, everything works properly. There is no awkward technical problems, and so on. If a problem happens, which it could happen, right? We've had this in class. Sometimes I go to class, I want to present, things that don't work. Sometimes I go to international conferences, I want to present, and things don't work. That's okay. Don't be nervous. Don't feel weird about it. Just perhaps say some joke, or I don't know. Just keep it light, and the audience will be there to support you, right? They're there. They're not there to. They will understand when technical problems happen. So if this happens, just be natural about it. Wait for it to be fixed, and then once it's done, you could just move along with your presentation. Okay. Okay, so we talked about this earlier, but I wanted to re-emphasize here again. So at this point, we want to talk about how do you design your slides, right? So I would assume many of you will end up using PowerPoint. It is one famous tool. Some people also use LaTeX to build their slides. That's okay. It creates more scientific slides, especially if you have a lot of codes or mathematic symbols and equations. LaTeX it creates really beautiful slides, but PowerPoint is not bad either. So when you design your slides, you have to kind of have a good balance of graphics and text, right? So graphics make difficult concepts easy to understand. So you want to add some image or some block diagram or some circuits. You don't want to simply have written text, right? Certainly you do not want to copy a paragraph like we saw earlier. You want to have a certain certain bullet format text in bullet format like we have here. And that's fine. And you certainly can use graphics and images and illustrations as well to make the comprehension of a difficult concept much easier to the mind of the audience, right? It helps the audience understand. Don't forget, your primary goal is to make the audience understand a really complicated engineering concept. That's your goal. How do you make the audience understand your engineering concept or your engineering design or your engineering solution? And images will certainly help in this regard. Text, the slides also help the audience keep track of the presentation. There is also, you could have graphic and text. Usually when I present, I have this. I have a graphic and I have text. So I have a combination of both. So you could certainly do that as well. Now, if you have text, right? If you have text and you want to say some text on your slide, that's okay, like we said, but you have to make sure that it's simplified. The same thing with graphics. If you have graphics, make sure that the graphics are perhaps animated, so something that builds up as you press on your clicker. Or if you can't do that, then just try to keep your graphics really light, not with too much detail. If you have too much detail, people will get lost in the information there, right? So simplify the slides to make them as quick to comprehend as possible. That's your goal, right? You don't want to make it too complicated that people will keep looking at the slide and won't listen to you. right? Because once you have some graphics or some slide, people will look at the slides, right? They will look at you, they will listen to you talk, but they will also look at the slide. And if you have too much detail, they will be lost in the details, right? You don't want that, right? Like we said here, slides compete for attention with a presentation. And so you have to keep it calibrated in a proper way. Don't make the audience read. You don't want an audience to read. In fact, that's not the goal. The goal is for them to listen. So you don't want them to read. Don't let them get lost in the detail. That's very important. If you include a big paragraphs, they will read, and they might read, or they might be confused, or they might be lost. So you don't want to do that. You want to keep it just bullet format and very basic for them to follow. Okay, so this is an example of a presentation that we have in here. What you see is we show the renewables in Nova Scotia. You have a pie diagram on the right. And so let me just get my laser pointer. You have a pie diagram here. You know, it shows you miscellaneous, wind power, other renewable energy sources. And then you have some description here. It's okay, but there are ways to improve the slide. So you could remove all this detail. You could just put the 13% here. So that kind of removes it. Instead of writing it in text, you could just write it here. The 19% that is mentioned here, you could just literally put it in the pie diagram. And then miscellaneous, you could just add miscellaneous here. I think that in the book they forgot to add that. So you have that. And then you could discuss it as you present. You don't need all this detail. So this is too much information. So if you see here, this is not a good slide, or perhaps, I mean, it's an okay slide, but there are ways to improve it, whereas this is a much better slide. It's simpler, it's easier to follow, and you are adding information, you know, in your text, orally, as you're presenting the talk. This is another example. So you have a slide, and if you look at this slide, there's you know, you have your 4 bullet format in it, so that's okay. But you know, having a bullet format with, I don't know, 2 to 3 lines of text, a huge full sentence or a paragraph, it's too much. It's just too much. Nobody's going to read this. So if you show this on a presentation, this slide here is considered a useless slide. Nobody will follow this. Nobody will have the time to read it. Nobody will, in fact, read it, right? It's not going to work. Hopefully, you're not there in front of the audience reading every word that you have on this slide. If you do that, that's a completely missed and terrible presentation. So you don't want to do that. So this is not a good slide. I mean, right off the bat, this is not a good slide. If we do the improvement, so we take this and then we try to improve the slide, you know, you have the title there, and then every one of these bullet formats, you just put it in few words, right? In few words, and you still have your 4 bullet formats here, and it's just few words, and that's it. You know, perhaps if you want to, you know, make it more interesting, you could add an image with every line or not. It's up to you. But that's also a possibility to keep it more kind of visually interesting. So, like we say, this is bad. This is certainly better than this one. Okay. Now, if you do introduce graphics in your presentation, which we said is not a bad idea, in fact, you should, and as engineers, technologists, researchers, you will eventually have graphics in your presentation. We're engineers, we will have graphics. You should certainly do the effort to explain what the graphics is all about. So, before you reveal the graphic, tell the audience what it's about, right? So make it clear to the audience what it's about. The simplified graphic will merely confirm what you've said, right? So it will just kind of confirm what you're saying orally to the audience. Okay. Explain the graph, the diagram, the image. You know, the whatever you're showing there, the circuit that you're showing, perhaps the code that you're showing. Don't assume the audience understand what they see. Right? So perhaps you understand it, and hopefully you do understand what you're putting on your slides, but don't assume the audience will understand it, right? So therefore you have to explain your image. You have to explain your diagram. And therefore, sometimes it's not a bad idea to have animation with your diagrams, so that with every click, something of the diagram shows up, and gradually this diagram is built so that the audience can follow. But sometimes I do recognize that this is not easy to do, and that's fine. If you do decide to do it, using Visio is not a bad is a reasonable tool for that. But otherwise, you could just show the image and then explain to the audience. Okay, the audience will quickly comprehend the graphic, and once they do, whatever they see on the slides, then they will, put their they will have eye contact with you, back to you. Right? So you're talking and you're showing the presentation. They will look at the presentation. Once they comprehend what they see on the presentation, then they will pivot toward you and then continue by looking at you. So making eye contacts with you, and then to comprehend the rest of what you are saying regarding this slide. Okay, another thing that you should be reminded when you present is to use a pointer. Laser pointer or PowerPoint laser pointer. And these laser pointers, they're sold everywhere. The price varies. You have a cheaper one, you have a more advanced one. So this is a nice one. I have this one here. It's about, I don't know, $75. I bought it in Europe, so I don't recall what's the conversion here, but it's more or less the same. You'll find it in some of the big stores that we have here in North America. If you're in Europe or Australia or other places around the world, I'm sure you'll find it in different stores. You could also buy it from Amazon and other places. So this is not a bad idea to have this kind of laser pointer. If you do get invited to give a presentation, usually the organizers will have this. If they don't, then you could certainly make arrangements before you give the talk that they gave you these pointer. Again, this gives you the freedom to move around, so you don't need to be stuck behind the podium. It gives you the freedom to do that. So on a projector, let's say you don't have a laser pointer, which could happen, a PowerPoint laser pointer, then you could then in that case you could just use the mouse on the computer that you have. But that kind of limits you to the podium area. Like I said, personally, I like to move when I give presentations. I like to move my hands, to engage with the audience, and I find it to be quite effective because it keeps the audience attentive as I present. So I think that's my style. It depends on your style when you present. The laser, so use a laser pointer. Don't get stuck talking to the screen. When you use a laser pointer, you should be reminded that you're using it to point to different areas of your talk. If you build your slides like I'm doing right now, where as I'm talking, the line appears or the image appears, then the laser pointer is not necessarily necessary. You just need it because you animated your slides. But if you want to use your laser pointer, you could point at a certain area or a text very quickly and then keep your eye contact to your audience. What usually sometimes it happens, I've seen this with other people, I've done it myself as well, which is not good, where I tend to look at the screen and forget the audience, right? Either because I forgot what's on the presentation and I'm looking at the screen instead of looking at the audience. So you shouldn't do that. You could look at the screen to be reminded of the topic that you want to discuss very quickly, point at it with your laser pointer, and then pivot back to the audience, look at your audience. You want, at the end of the day, to always be there for your audience. So the graphics and the presentation, the PowerPoint presentation, is for your audience. It's not really for you. It's kind of also for you because it guides you on the talking points that you want to discuss, but it's really there for the audience. So don't be stuck looking at the screen. I've had students where they totally present for 5 to 10 minutes and they are fixated at the screen. They're looking at the screen. They're not looking at the audience. This is certainly not a good presentation practice. This is also another tip. Never use your fingers to point at objects on a screen. I mean, look, once in a while you might do that, but you want to keep it professional, so you could just use it with your pointer. Another thing that you could do with your slides, and I talked about it before, but I'll mention it again right now in a specific slide, is to use a progressive reveal. So essentially, every time you click your laser pointer or your mouse or the enter key on your keyboard, part of the slide appears, right? So you can animate your presentation, your PowerPoint presentation, so that the bulleted text appears one at a time. Right? And this is kind of good because you're building it gradually with the audience. It builds a slide with the audience. You are going at the same pace as the audience, and you know, you're all on the same pace. You're moving along together. Okay. The audience will always know what point you're discussing. So if you have a slide where everything shows up at once, it's kind of perhaps intimidating. They don't know which area you're talking about. It could be confusing. Not necessarily recommended. Although, as mentioned earlier, some people like it that way. They don't like animation on slides. I personally like to have these animations on slide, so that's kind of a personal preference. The audience won't be able to read ahead. When you animate it like this, like we're doing right now, they won't be able to read. They have no idea what's going to be the next slide, right? Once I'm done, I press on enter, or I click on my Bluetooth laser pointer, and then the next line appears, and then they'll be able to read. So they cannot skip or go too fast. We're all moving along together. Graphics that you have can also be animated, so you could do that. So you could animate your graphics as you click, something appears, or if you want, you know, you could also use a GIF image if that helps whatever you're presenting. That's also a possibility. So this slide, what the message of this slide is to kind of tell you that you really need to practice your presentation, right? So certainly presentations that are short in time. So let's say somebody gives you, they tell you have 5 minutes to present, and then you go, and then you'll end up with 15 minutes. And this could happen because you haven't practiced, right? I've had students last semester, they were supposed to do their presentation in 5 minutes, and then they came in, they spent, I think, 15, 17 minutes. So clearly they did not present, and they did not do well in that evaluation. You really need to meet the mark of the time that is given to you. You cannot go beyond that. I keep repeating this because it's very important. And this only is possible with practicing. So long presentations, if somebody gives you an hour and 30 to give a talk, you can practice, but you have a lot of time, and you could adjust things, you could skip slides, and then you could meet the deadline. But if they give you a short time, they give you 10 minutes, they give you 5 minutes, it's very short. You really need to practice. Shorter presentations require more practice than longer presentations. I remember once when I was doing my doctorate degree, my Ph.D., I entered into a 3-minute thesis presentation, right? It's a competition. You present your thesis. Thesis, some people spend 4 to 6 years working on a Ph.D. thesis, and now they're asking you to present it in only 3 minutes. This is ridiculously complicated. And, what I had to do was to practice many times, right? It's not easy to present work that I spent for the past 4 to 5 years working on it and present it in 3 minutes. That's not easy. Right now, for you guys, perhaps you wrote 18 pages and we're only asking you to do that in 5 minutes. How on earth are you going to do that? It is possible only if you practice. You practice and you find only the essential stuff to share with the audience. So shorter presentations are always more difficult than longer presentations, and they require more practicing. Let's go through some of the details right now. So make sure you are within the time limit, whatever it might be. 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So for you guys, for EVA and EVB, we told you your EVA should be between 2 to 3 minutes, and your EVB cannot be beyond 5 minutes, right? So that's your budget. Now, how are you going to do that? I don't know. You need to work to make sure that you hit the limit and you achieve this limit that is provided to you. And the best thing to do that is to practice. Come up with your slides, practice, and then make sure to realize what you should remove, what you should add, so that it's complete, but it's also within the provided time. Adjust your speech as necessary. Sometimes you talk, and then for some reason you realize that you spent more time on a slide than other slides. And so this kind of sometimes it puts you in a rush, and you won't be able to cover the other slides properly. So you don't want to do that. But if you have to, because you don't want to go beyond the limited time, then well, you have no choice. You will do that, right? If you go a bit too slow initially, and then near the end you have no time, you'll go to the kind of last the slides quicker, and perhaps that doesn't give justice to these slides, and therefore practicing becomes very necessary. But if you need to adjust, you could adjust as necessary. So you could go faster on some slides, slower on others, so that you meet the time that is dedicated to you. Record yourself to check for natural conversational delivery. We live in a day and age where everybody has a computer. In all computers, they have a camera integrated. So you could record yourself. You could record your speech, your audio. You could record your video. You could record, the audio and video together, and then see how you perform. So there are different ways to verify how you are performing. Good ways to improve your presentation is to have some friends that could monitor you. You could practice in front of them, or some family member, or your girlfriend, your spouse, your wife, some family member that you just present to them at home, and then see what they think of it. They won't necessarily understand the topic, it's not in their area of expertise, but they could help you in improving your presentation. So that's not a bad idea either. Right now, don't do that. We're doing social distancing. You shouldn't be in the same room with other people, but if that happens in the future, hopefully when everything goes back to normal, then you could do that. Normal movement, you can certainly move your hands as you present. Don't overdo it. Some people, they move their hand too much, and that becomes confusing because or distracting, because we will be looking at their hands more than their slides or their presentation. We'll be too taken by their hand gestures and so on. So go ahead, do it. I like to move my hands. I'm very expressive in that way, but you have to use it with proper judgment. Effective transition between the presentation topic is also something that you could check when you record yourself. How do you transition from one slide to the other? How do you transition from one subtopic to the other subtopic? So that's also useful when you record yourself. Now here the recommendation is to practice at least 3 times, but ideally you want to practice more. So if you have a short talk, I would say perhaps you need to practice more than three times, right? So if you're giving a talk for 3 minutes or 5 minutes, you need to practice certainly more than 3 times to make sure you really achieve this target of 3 or 5 minutes. If your talk is longer, then you can practice less, and that's just based on my personal experience. Okay, now how to deliver the presentation. So as we said before, you need to have an opening to your presentation, and it's always good to begin with a confident, attention-grabbing opening. This is very important. It grabs the attention as you begin your presentation. It brings everybody's focus to you instead of looking at their phone or their computer. And then you could, once you grab their attention, you have to do whatever is necessary to keep their attention. Don't forget, there is a natural tendency that we lose. The attention span is somewhere, I don't know, roughly 10 minutes. The attention span of typical people. So, every 10 minutes you'll lose some of your audiences. They will either go, their eyes may be looking at you, but their mind is somewhere else. And that happens, and you can't do anything about it. But hopefully you'll be able to grab their attention. And making a joke or doing something that is light, or showing some animation, or showing some graphics, some nice image, some interesting display of a system, or something that is interesting, attention grabbing, it will bring their attention back to you and not keep them, you bring their attention back to the presentation. So this is all important to keep in mind when you do your presentation. Success here will build confidence and gain audience respect and attention. So this is good for you, and people will really appreciate your talks. And if you get invited once, you'll get invited a second and third time because they see value in somebody like you, right? You are a good presenter. People want to come to your session. They want to listen, and that's good for you. If you're looking for a job, it will help you to get promotion. If you want to become you want to gain some leadership skills, this is also good to advance in that area. So there's a lot of benefit when you do a good presentation. There's a lot of benefit for you. So it is in your interest to be a good presenter, and that's the hope of this lecture. Another thing that is important to be reminded when you do your presentation is, the whole business of vocal pauses, right? So filler words like and so on. I am guilty of doing them. Once I gave a talk. My brother is a professor of computer science in Montreal. He invited me. I went, gave the talk. It was in French, and as I'm talking, perhaps I'm doing right now, I do tend to use filler words, right? And so on. And he came to me at the end as we're going home. He said, "You use a lot of and you should stop doing that." And I told him, I appreciate your observation. I will try, but I could totally tell you that this is hard to monitor. One way that is recommended is to practice. The more you practice, you could kind of minimize these and filler words and so on. So instead of saying them, you could just keep it total silence. This comes only with practice. So we'll highlight some key ideas to take here, and hopefully this will benefit you. When you're at a brief loss of words, don't use any. So don't say anything. Just complete silence. That's okay. There's nothing to that. So practice often, and you won't be at a loss of words. So the more you practice, the more prepared you are, and you won't use these filler words. If you need a slight pause to gather your thoughts, don't worry. Your audience won't head to the door, so they're there. They're gonna listen to you, and it's in your interest to improve your talk by kind of reflecting on yourself. And again, another way is to see if you're using these useless filler words is by recording yourself or having somebody that you trust, a family member, a friend, to be present as you practice your talk, and they will help you with these observations. I mentioned this before, but I'll mention it again in a dedicated slide. It's the whole point of making sure you have eye contact with your audience. This is very important. Like I said earlier, some people, when they present, they look at the screen and they forget about their audience. Or sometimes they're too shy and they look at their phone, they look at their shoes, they look at the ceiling, they look at the door, but they don't look at their audience. And that's not good, right? You want to make an eye contact with the audience. You want to have a connection with your audience, and it's very important. So we'll give you some hints on how to achieve this. Number one, we associate eye contact with honesty and confidence. So there's a kind of a sense of honesty when you have an eye contact with somebody. It's not always true, but that's generally what is generally believed in society. Look around the room and share eye contact equally as you present. So just go around the room and share your eye contact. So you want to make sure that you look at different people. You don't want to be looking at one person like we said earlier. Initially, if you're in a room and you're not too familiar, you're too shy, you could look at a friendly face, somebody that you know, and that could give you confidence. But then eventually you want to share your eye contact with other people in the room. If someone appears bored, feel free to ignore them, right? So if somebody appears like rolling their eyes, or they seem bored, or they seem kind of hostile in the room, you can ignore them. You don't need to make eye contact with them. You could look at the other faces that are perhaps friendlier and that are there to support you as you're presenting. There is also a tendency to look at people that will nod their head as you're talking. So look at them, but don't just stay staring at them. You have to also move your head and your eyes to other people in the room. Don't forget the sides, the extremities. Usually, the people on the extremities of your audience in 180 degrees are forgotten. So make sure that you distribute your eye contact to everybody in the room. Look at the audience members for a few seconds and then move on. Don't keep staring for a long time. And don't go row by row, seat by seat. This is also not nice. It's awkward. It's not professional, and it seems quite fake and not natural. So just make your eye contact naturally, and then just move on from one person to the other. Okay, the other thing that is important to focus on when you present is the body language, right? So you move. You're going to end up moving, I assume, as you're presenting, or perhaps you're behind the podium. You will have some gesture with your hands, perhaps with your feet. You have this is called your body language, how you're standing, your posture as you're presenting, and this is also important. It conveys information of how you are delivering the content. So we'll go through some hints that you should attempt to keep it in mind. So number one, stand square to your audience, right? So stand facing your audience, feet, hips, and shoulders properly square to the audience, good posture, and appear confident as you do your presentation. Speak naturally with normal gestures. So don't be fake. Just be natural as you are, naturally with normal gestures. It's very important to be who you are, right? Don't fake it. You need to be natural in the way that you are, but also professional. Don't make gestures that are too quick, right? So sometimes you move your hand too quickly, or you walk too quickly. That's not good. You want to be able to walk across the room as you're presenting, but you could think of it as though you have glue under your shoes, right? So you're walking, but with the feet that are glued. So you're able to lift it from the ground, but you're moving slowly, as though you're kind of walking on, I don't know, perhaps on the moon. So don't walk with a quick movement. Don't do a lot of repetitive movements or too big of a gestures and so on. Don't fiddle with keys. So let's say you have keys in your jacket or in your pocket, or if you have change, don't do that. That's very annoying. It's annoying for the audience. You might be doing it because you're nervous and you don't realize this. You're just doing it naturally, but you don't realize this. But the audience will be annoyed to look at you doing that. So certainly don't do it. You have to make sure that this is that you pay attention to this. The other thing that is also important to be reminded of is don't put your hands in your pocket. So this is kind of a, people want to see your hands. I think one key things that is generally mentioned with hands is that if you have nothing to hide, you will show your hands. Whereas if you're too shy or you have something to hide, you will put your hands in the pocket. So it's kind of a natural body language advice is to have your hands out as you're presenting. You could gesture with your hands. One hand will be holding the Bluetooth laser point clicker, and then in the other hands is you could gesture and you could do movements with it. And all of this conveys information, right? So you're presenting information with your mouth when you're talking. You're presenting information with the slides and the pictures and the text on your PowerPoint slides, and you're presenting information with the way you talk, with the way you move your hands, with the way you move your body, and so on. All of them, they add value to your presentation. So you have to make sure to keep track of all of these things. Okay, this is a big one. So overcoming stage fright. So it's normal to be a little uncomfortable the first time you present. It's just normal because you suddenly you go to the front and there's a lot of eyeballs looking at you, and so you get a bit overwhelmed, and it's okay that you get a bit nervous and uncomfortable. So what's going to end up happening is you need to show that you are in command of the topic. That you are interested in your topic, you know the topic very well, you are the expert, and when you do that, all of this kind of gives you confidence when you present. Right. One other thing that is important to overcome stage fright is to practice a lot. Right. The more you practice, the more prepared you are, and the more prepared you are, the less fear you'll have of public speaking. So this is kind of another hint of how to improve in this area. Remember that the audience is on your side. The audience is not there to be malicious against you or to have you fail. That's not their interest. In general, they're there to support you, and they want you to succeed, and they're there to listen to you. So they're on your side. Finally, when you finish your presentation, so you've done your introduction, you've explained the different topics of your technical subject, you've concluded, you've given the take-home message, at the end, you'll have a bunch of minutes that is offered to you for Q&A. So for Q&A, for questions and answers, right? So this is an opportunity to interact with the audience. And usually you'll get a bunch of questions, right? You'll get a bunch of questions. If you don't get any questions, that's sometimes rare, but in general there will be questions. Sometimes it does happen where nobody will ask a question, and when this is the case, in order to keep the event interesting, the organizers themselves, they will ask you one or two questions to keep the audience engaged and to kind of have something during the Q&A session. So you'll perhaps see that. So most presentations will end with a Q&A session, like we said. So as you finish your presentation, your last slide facing the audience should be your take-home message. Right? This is the last slide. Right? This is what they're seeing. And then you begin with the Q&A. The people will come in, they will go to the microphone, and then they will ask their question. So for you, you need to stand squarely and facing the audience, welcoming the questions. Perhaps you have a nice smile on your face so that you appear that you're interested and that you're friendly and that you're eager to hear their questions. When your question is presented to you, it is not a bad idea to repeat the question. So somebody asks you a question, repeat it again, so that you'll be able to kind of rehear the question again, and making sure that you got the question properly, and that the audience hears the question a second time. Hopefully the first time they heard it on a microphone, not straight to you. If it is straight to you, then of course you need to repeat it again so everybody can hear it on the microphone. But repeating it a second time, even if it was done on a microphone, is not a bad idea, so that the audience really understand what is the question that is being presented. Then try to somehow address the question. You could try to give an answer to the question. If you know an answer to the question, that's great. Go for it. Give a nice, concise answer. Don't give a too long answer. Just give a nice, concise answer to the question. If sometimes you don't have an answer, that's okay. Tell them that you be honest about it, right? Be honest that you are not familiar with this topic, or that it's outside your area of expertise, or that you haven't studied it from this angle, and then move on. If sometimes a discussion it becomes kind of a back and forth, you could always invite the person asking the question to go offline and then to discuss further during coffee break, and so on. So there are different ways to address Q&A sessions. Okay, so address the answer to the whole audience. This is very important. Although the question comes from one person, you are giving the answer to the others. Don't forget, when people ask a question, 3 people benefit from this question. The person asking the question, you, the person trying to give an answer to the question, and the audience. Right? So 3 people will benefit. And so always keep in mind that you are not only talking to the person asking the question, but to the entire audience as well. And like we said, if you can't answer the question, confess and offer to find the answer, or give be honest about it, right? Be honest. This is very important. Be authentic and be honest. You cannot say things that are untrue, or things that you kind of cook up on the fly. That's just not professional. So you need to be honest of your own knowledge and your skill set. End by saying how much you've enjoyed giving the presentation at the end, and then at the end, usually what happens is people will applaud and thank you for being there. So this is the point where you can say thank you. You don't need a slide for thank you. This is where you say thank you. Now, finally, I just wanted to show you very quickly how to animate your slides. So this is, you have a screenshot PowerPoint, and you can simply go to the animation ribbon on top, and over there, what you could do is you could click on the animation that you want to use, and then this will appear sequentially, right? So you'll have it here. You can customize the animation in the animation pane on the right, right? So you could decide the sequence of where each one will appear. If you notice here, let me bring the laser pointer. You have the points. So this is the first. As you click, this is the first one that appears. This is the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the seventh, and the eighth, and then this is the last one, right? So with every click of your Bluetooth laser pointer, this is what will appear. One line will appear. So this is how you do it. And the sequence will show numerically there. There's a bunch of resources on the Microsoft website, so you could see on this and how to do it. So I'll leave it up to you to see, but this is just a quick way to get started with this. Now, in the previous one, we had a slide with bulleted text, and we animated that. In other words, with every click, one of the lines showed up. You could do the same thing with an image. So in this case, on this capture, as you can see, we have a windmill, and with every click of the mouse or every click of your Bluetooth laser pointer, one part of the arrow and the text will show up that tells us what we have in the image, right? So you could do that. So again, it's the same process. You go to animation on top, and then you could prepare the different text that appears. So here you have the blades of the windmill that shows up with the first click. And then with the second click, you have different parts that could show up, and then you could do some effects as well. You want to minimize the effect. My choice is to, with every click, you want something to appear, but to bring them in weird movement and so on. That's a bit too much. It doesn't make a professional document, but I'll leave it to your judgment to see what makes sense for your slides. Okay. And then you could play with this, and then the more you test this, the better you'll understand. Looking at it on a screen right now in a video, it doesn't perhaps give you much information, but when you try it on your own, you'll understand how this operates, and through a trial and error, you'll get a better handle of this. There's also a bunch of videos on the Microsoft website that shows how this is how you could animate PowerPoint slides, and you could also find different videos on YouTube as well that explains this. Okay, that's it. I think that completes our lecture for today. Thank you for your attention, and then the next video, video 2, I will post it soon this week, where I will explain to you how EVA is and what is the deliverable for EVA. Now, this is the first deliverable that we're doing remotely because of the COVID-19 situation. Okay. Good luck to you all. Thank you for your attention, and stay safe. And if you have any question, I'm always reachable via email. Thank you.